now? How about now? There we go. That's got it. Did anything happen between now and Monday? Nope. Looks like we're back on both sides. Yep. Okay. Anyway, here we are. Yeah, that was fun. Anyway, we are back. Let me turn off the YouTube thing. Little ditzy tonight. I've put a lot of hours in here, and I am just basically going to cut to the questions, I think. Let me just get this solved real fast here. I can't do this before for some reason. I have to do it while it's running. We'll turn off the commercials on YouTube. There we go. All right. Come on, baby. There we go. Super. Got it. Everything's copacetic. Yeah, I was just saying I've been here a lot of time, a lot of hours, and little cook tonight. So I thought what we would do is just probably jump into the questions. But we're making really great progress on the image quality, on the facial quality. I had a little test. I wasn't going to show it, but then I decided I will. Give me a second here. It's just 10 seconds. But I'll just drag it in there just for the heck of it. That's something you see every day. Dad and his son. One more time for giggles. Yeah, it's good. It looks great. The image quality is terrific. It really looks, just really looks well. Okay. There we go. The other day says, hello, I just want to say hi before I died of allergies and what is probably a mild cold. I mean, I'll be fine once the Dayquil hits, but until then I'm dead. Well, I'm with you, pal. And, the only thing better than Dayquil is NyQuil. I remember when I was first tried that NyQuil stuff, it was just great. Yes, it is. So, yeah. Just David Booty says you won't need perfect faces if you don't do many close-ups. Well, unfortunately, that's what filmmaking is all about. It's all in the close-ups. And Eric Blake, thank you very much for letting me know about Amelia. We did our right angle on that. It was fun, so it's good to be there. Road Rider's back from Thailand and Taiwan. Wow, that sounds like an exciting trip. But everything there looked good. So, yeah, so I'm real happy with, I'm happy with the progress. It's just really, really tedious. It's really, really, you just have to get this one image right, then you have to do 2/3, half, but then you have to do one in every different outfit. But the quality is great. So now let's see what we got here. Go to right to the forum. Yeah, the NyQuil, getting that NyQuil, if you'd been like sick for a while, and you're just like up all night, then finally along comes NyQuil, and it's like, oh man, it's great. Got him. Coach said, did I see the video of 2 cops showing up to an American's home in Florida? question about her different non-threat opinion. Was that two British cops? I have seen British cops show up in America at an American store. I saw it once. Man, I find that I just find that full, not even threatening. I just find it hilarious. Hilarious. Will you channel your college acting self and drop an octave? I don't know. Throat's a little off tonight, so we'll see. Possibly. Hey, first time chat from Splacknut. Big N, little Y, big frickin' Q. Love me some NyQuil. Yeah, that grape NyQuil was just like, oh man. You know, I'm sure a lot of people did that recreationally. Let's see what we got here. Was it really British cops checking on an American who posted something? Because I did see that once. I guess the guy flew in from London, and I'll tell you, I would just, if somebody came to my door and if a couple of British cops came to my door and asked me about the Amelia thing that I did, I would just smile, you know, honestly. I would just smile. No, I think it's real. I've saw one of them that really looked real. Falcon says, hey man, just wanted to thank you. Your Cold War series got me through my first deployment a few years ago. That's really nice to hear. Thank you. I listen to it after flying every morning. I appreciate you. Falcon, that's so nice of you, dude. Were you flying a Falcon? Two American cops in Florida about a Facebook post she made criticism of the Israel government. Well, that surprises me because we can criticize any government we want to here, and I would not have expected to see that in the great state of Florida. Yeah, we have the Second Amendment and we have the First Amendment. How's my received pronunciation? It's not good. I'd like to get just do a lot more work on accents because I just love the I just love being able to do them. What was it? It was Hugh Jackman. I think he was on Graham Norton's show, saying three words, and if you say these three English words the way you normally would, then you're speaking Australian accent. I forget what the three words are. Gosh, it's 22nd already. That can't be possible. Okay, let's see what we got. So we have questions tonight curated by Marisha Dark. Thank you very much. We're going to have accents in the colonies. Well, we're going to have colonies that are definitely nationalized. I've got. We'll talk about that on Monday because I hope you bring it back up again, Air Techie, because I'd like to talk more about the politics of that on Monday. I've given that an awful lot more thought than I had originally. So let's see what we got here. We got a Marisha Dark. We got an Ian Nolan. It wasn't Ian Nolan who debated the thing with me. Sorry about that. Braden Higby, Guy Balo, Capital G Geek, Jacob Belcheck, Bill Thompson. There's a new name. Broke college student, and Eric Blake. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, we'll start with Marisha Dark. Topic, they're not sending their best. Yeah. Bill, I come bearing gifts. I know how much you love your body cam videos, and I think I found the final boss. It's called How to Get a Felony for $379. Not to spoil it, but to suffice it to say, this young man's IQ is probably hovering around room temperature Kelvin. I consider myself a healer and a teacher, but such a person is beyond my skill. He needs elvish medicine. That's a great line. Between this and just the flood of zombies and NPCs and those defending them we've been seeing erupting in recent weeks, the older I get, the more I start to contemplate whether society would be better off if we had different forms of governance and different degrees of freedom based on IQ and levels of consciousness, the latter of which is explained here with a link. That if a person is cognitively incapable of understanding arguments about freedom and reciprocity at a hardware level, then teaching them effectively becomes impossible, and the only real solution at that point is isolating and containing them. We already do this to some extent with children and those deemed non-compos mentis. Why not? That might be non-compos mentis, might be a Latin term I've never heard before. Why not adults who exhibit this as well? I guess if there's a question here, it would be the moral argument for, what would be the moral argument for not doing that? What's the limiting principle here? Or do you agree it's a good idea and the only question is the technical issue of how to actually create such a system fairly and accurately? Okay. Non-compos mentis. Okay, that's a lot of, there's a lot of question here. All right, I'm going to start with something that's obviously related to this, but it's a completely different tack. I occasionally watch Asmongold now and then, and I think generally the guy's got, he's got a pretty sensible take on things, and I don't know, I just kind of like the guy. But I saw him doing a reaction video to a woman who was saying that that it's not just a question of here's a break for the Gen Zers. It's not even a question of the alphas not being able to read. It's that they are simply not cognitively thinking, that things are coming through the ears, going out through their hands, and that they're just incapable of thought in the way that you and I understand the term thought. And as I said, I almost always agree with Asmongold's take, and in this case, he was saying that it's the teacher's problems for not teaching kids about what the future is going to be. His opinion basically was that they should be teaching kids how to deal with AI, because the question came up, and this was basically the operational question for this entire stream. Why do I need to know this if I can simply ask AI and get the answer? And he said, why do you have to learn how to do long division, since nobody does long division and everybody has a phone and there's a calculator on the phone? And since there's a calculator on the phone, why waste time teaching people long division? And that argument is everywhere, and it's a fatal argument. I don't want to spend too much time on long division. I can do long division, but obviously if I had some serious long division to do, I would do it on a calculator. But multiplication, for example, I've talked many times about how when I was growing up in Bermuda, we would come to the States once a year, and I'd spend time with my cousins in Pennsylvania, and what a great time that was for me. I do remember having at least one or possibly two of those vacations significantly dampened by the fact that I had to learn my multiplication tables while I was away from school. And for those of you not familiar with this process, there was a time when essentially every student, and I was pretty young, I must have been second, third grade, something like that, we had to memorize our multiplication tables, and to 12. So 3 times 8, and every single day I used that multiplication tables in my head. 6 sevens are 42, 7 sevens are 49, 5 eights are 56. I just memorized it. So the act of memorizing things improves your memory, and the more memorizing you do, the better your memory is. Actors out there who have to memorize a lot of lines, I think the The real pros were the soap opera stars, because they had to memorize just, there's nothing happens in a soap opera other than dialogue. And they had to memorize just tons and tons of things. There's no question that the more memorizing you do, the better you get at memorizing. But to the bigger point, because Asmongold is just dead wrong about this, and many other people are too. The question was, why do we need to know how to write? This was brought up by him. He thought the idea of cursive was writing cursive was just ridiculous. Why would you need cursive when you can simply dictate or type? And we're at the point now where young students are saying, why do I need to write this down? Or why do I even take notes? But when you really, really get down to the core of the argument, the basic of it is, why do I need to know anything? Because AI knows everything. Everybody's got AI with them. So why do I need to know anything if AI already knows it? And I have access to AI. And let's just pretend that nothing happens to the internet or anything like that. Let's just say that everything goes on swimmingly. And this is the most important lie that's being propagated out there. I'll give it to you simply. I'm very proud of this. Of all the things I ever said, this may actually be the most relevant and pertinent one. But dealing with this issue, I said once, the problem isn't that that you won't know the answer. The problem with having AI doing your thinking for you is you don't know what questions to ask. Your mental horizons are so small. I've mentioned many times, you've seen it everywhere, but lately I've seen it on the podcast, where he'll ask these women to name 3 countries, and they can't. And put aside the fact that they all want guys who are making $10 million a year, and they're 31 years old, and they've got all this other thing, and they're going to supposedly take these delusional women to Italy for 3 weeks. Put aside the fact that there's not a guy there's not a guy out there who would ever take somebody like that to Italy if she doesn't know where Italy is. A guy like that is a top level performer, and he's not going to embarrass himself in front of his friends by dating or marrying some woman who can't name 3 countries. But it's much more pervasive than that, much more. If you don't know geography, then you don't know what the world looks like. Not what other planets look like, not what galaxies look like, none of that. You don't know what the world... Sorry, hang on. Hey, honey, doing Stratosphere Lounge. That's okay. Everything all right? Okay. Okay, I'll call you when I'm done. All right, sweetheart. Love you very much. See you soon. Okay, bye. I missed my chance, but I always tell her when I come home, everybody says hi. So what I really wonder what kind of world these people live in. If you can't name 3 countries, if you don't know which countries border America, what does that world look like? What does it look like? I mean, I can't picture it. I really can't. And so, every now and then, just to test my memory, I'll just see how many countries I can name. And it's generally about 160, 170, 180, something like that. I always end up missing a couple, especially in Africa. But I can get virtually all of them. And I know where they are. that's how I mem- that's how I remember them. I just start off in North America is real easy, but you forget the Caribbean. There's a lot of stuff there. You go to South America, jump over there, you do Scandinavian down through Africa and around through Northern Asia and Southern Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, and Pacifics, and then back you go. But I know where things are, and so I know what their relationship to each other is. And you can't understand history if you don't understand geography. And to say, well, what do I need to know history for if I ever need to know what year the Battle of 1812 was, the War of 1812 was fought in? And a lot of people fail that question, I might add. Then what does your what does your mental picture look like? And the this idea that no, we should be teaching kids how to use AI to get the answers. They don't know what questions. They live in a dark room with maybe a faint, like a birthday candle, and all they can see is the stuff's right in front of them. You can't understand what mathematics is if you don't understand what multiplying means. And if you don't understand what multiplying means, then it's not just a question of all the mathematical things that you don't learn. The entire concept of the leverage of mathematics, of multiplication, the difference between addition and multiplication in terms of the power of the outcome, that relationship lost. And he was saying that there was one thing that was just really egregious to me. It was no, it'll come to me. But much more to the point is the fact that if you don't do these things, then the neural pathways in your brain don't develop. You just simply don't have them. And the meta of this is what does that what kind of world is that for humans? It's the kind of world that James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise would just come in and just phaser from orbit. If everybody is completely stupid and dependent on their phones for everything, they have no mental horizon, they have no perspective, they have no history, they have no geography, they've heard a couple of things from a couple of people that they believe with certainty because of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Then what are they? They're farm animals. What's the purpose of being alive if you don't have the ability to expand your mental powers and all of this stuff? Gotham Coach says, Bill, we need to install USA patriotism in our public schools starting in kindergarten through grade 12. Pledge of Allegiance before class, teach constitutional rights from 6th to 12th grade. Yeah, we used to do that. We had a class called civics. And you don't. Air Techie says that's the whole point of social control. Well, yeah, but there's even a deeper problem with that. Who's going to invent the next stuff? And even if you are willing to say, well, the AI will invent all the next stuff, what is the purpose of being alive then? What are you there for? I mean, here for? What are you here for? Why are you here? Is it to have fun? Nobody seems to be having fun. And how can you have fun when you have no sense of achievement, no sense of this is another point that the people in that video, not Asmongold, but the people in the video were saying, is there's no delayed gratification, which means there's no wanting something. If you never have to exert yourself, then you never ever get the reward of having completed something difficult and then achieving it. It's just genuinely terrifying. Trinity Water says they are Star Trek, Starfleet Academy. It's Starfleet Kindergarten is what that show is. It's Starfleet Kindergarten. They're kindergartners coming in there. Here's how you be nice to people, and here's how you share, and here it's insane. Dalton Burrows says, Bill, we for sure should make what we saw mandatory in schools. Also, the Patriot. Obviously, it isn't historically accurate, but it's patriotic to the stream, and I love it. Yeah, Patriot is a history lesson, and I think what we saw series should be in all the schools, but I don't own them, and I have no control over that. So, my favorite first grader asked me yesterday why no one at school had told her it was the USA's 250th birthday. Well, see, you can't add, you can't do math. And students are taught that slavery only happened in the United States, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. It's not a question of people being spectacularly undereducated. The thing that can be remedied, although with difficulty. The thing that scares me is that I think that if you don't get this stimulation pretty early, I don't think you ever develop the neural pathways. And and I do not understand how parents can do that to their children, how they can abdicate that much responsibility. You know, I mean, this has been going on for 10, 15, 20 years now almost. But you go into a restaurant, you see a family at dinner, and you see six people looking at their phones. Who allows that? I mean, who allows that? It is what he was arguing for was the lack of effort. That effort itself was ridiculous. That there was something ridiculous about just the effort of having to do these things. Why should we go to the effort when all of these things are available instantly? And Gotham Coach said President Trump has not mentioned once about bringing back the Pledge of Allegiance before class and bringing back patriotism and teaching kids civics, constitutional rights. They don't say the pledge anymore. When did that stop? The same people allow the checking of phones in movie theaters, says Eric Blake. All of this stuff. It's not that society cannot survive. Screen time is a threat to civilization, says Trinity Waters, and I think I could not agree more. I actually think that is the single great threat to America now, is the dopamine dependently. And listen, just so anybody's not thinking I'm sitting here on my high horse, I have a problem with this myself. I have a problem with scrolling through shorts. It keeps putting stuff I find interesting in front of me. Although a lot of it's just plain garbage, and I just got the dopamine addiction, and I recognize it, and I'm keeping it in control. I deleted my Facebook app. I deleted my X app on my phone because I was just, here's something, mortifying. So, see, Road Rider says, because I can find the product of 6 times 6 in my head faster than typing it into a calculator. Yes, I do it all the time. All the time. And I'm not pinning this on Asmongold. On the contrary, it's an extremely common attitude. But what is the purpose of life if you don't think about anything? Why are we here? I'm really asking. I'm genuinely asking. Why are we here? Red 4 says that's exactly how the algorithm is designed to work. Social media is designed to put us into echo chambers, so we'll keep scrolling and keep clicking because that's how they make money. Yes, and it's not only how they make money. They wouldn't be making money if people weren't enjoying it. So what they've done is they've found this combination of dopamine stimulation, and they've maximized that. We're way beyond brain rot like Skibbity Toilet now. We're way beyond that. We are now at the point where we have to really, really start asking ourselves what the actual functional IQ of this generation Alpha is going to be. And if I had to guess, I would say it'd be in the 70s. It's when you have to struggle to solve a problem instead of just getting the answer from AI. When you have to struggle to solve a problem, it's the process of solving the problem that teaches you how to solve other problems. He's not making a rhetorical point, Eric. A couple people in his stream said this is a bad take. It's just, I remember what he said. He said, no one should have to learn algebra. It's ridiculous that people should have to learn algebra because no one ever uses algebra. And that's not the point, dude. It's not the point. I agree I don't use algebra frequently in my day-to-day life, but I understand algebra. And the reason it's important to understand algebra is not to understand how to solve a math problem. The reason you need to understand algebra is you need to understand the relationship between variables. That's what you need to understand. How one variable can change an equation, and then two variables can change an equation. And if you don't understand variables, then you can't really think seriously about anything. You can't solve the entire idea of trying to get an answer by isolating the variables is not possible if you don't understand algebra. But if you've got a problem and you've got something that's failing, let's say you've got a problem where let's just say something simple and catastrophic. Let's just say that there's a jet that's crashing, and it's a model jet. I mean, a type of jet. Let's say it's an Airbus A320, just to not pile on Boeing. Let's just say Airbus A320 start falling out of the sky, and you're trying to understand why. Well, what you do is you start to isolate the variables. You have to say there must be something that's causing this. Clearly something's causing this. So how do we find out what it is? Well, okay, they all crashed because they had twin engine failures. Okay, did one engine fail before the other? Was it always the left engine first, or or was it sometimes left, sometimes right? Because if the left engine failed first every single time, then that's a clue, right? If it was random, it had nothing to do with the engine should fail 50% of the time. But to isolate the variables, first thing you might ask is, did they both fail, left engine first, right engine first? No. Well, then we know it's not something that's unique to the engines. You isolated that variable. If you don't understand that principle, you'll never get to the solution of this. And then you can just work it down. And if it continues to be mysterious, then you get into weirder and weirder things. What time did the jets take off? If they all took off before 6 a.m. local time, or if they all went down at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that may be almost inconceivable, especially if it's local time. But then you've got something that you can work on. And just me riffing on the problem is showing you how the understanding of variables affects your ability to make decisions throughout life completely. And that's just one area. So all of that to say that I really, really think that you could make a compelling case. And look, I'm all about freedom, man. Government intervention and regulation and censorship and all of that stuff. As a general rule, I'm against. But I'm also against handing out free fentanyl to children. And that's kind of what we're doing. And I have no problem whatsoever with going after the fentanyl dealers. I have no problem with blowing up boats that are running fentanyl into the country. And yet, what we're doing is we are introducing a mind virus that is not just making us a little dumber, it's preventing us from thinking in any way that we understand the term. This complaint against cursive. I have a fountain pen because it's affected and makes me feel smarter than I am. No, I just like the feel of it. But I write in cursive. I always wrote in cursive. I don't write screenplays or essays or anything in cursive. But my point is this: one of the things that they found recently, relatively recently, is that in medical schools, surgeries that used to take 2 hours are now taking 6 hours because the medical students do not have the fingertip control that every generation before them had. And I thought, why is that degrading so fast? Well, they just all they do is they swipe. Yeah, but no, this takes precision, and it's precision control of your fingers. And if you can't write cursive, and if you're writing cursive all the time, my handwriting used to be really, really good. It's degraded significantly. But these are all of the unexplained and unexpected consequences from elimination of these things. Here's another great example. Gotham Coach says they're removing analog clocks from school and not teaching kids how to read analog clocks. So somebody with this attitude of, well, this is the world is changing, would say, well, why would you have to learn how to read an analog clock? I mean, why not just have digital clocks? They're more accurate, they're easier to read, 6:05. Yeah, but what a digital clock doesn't do is it doesn't show you the relationship of time. It doesn't give you any sense of the relationship of time. And the ability to glance at something and to say it's 2 hours and 20 minutes later on an analog clock, you know how long that feels because everybody my age sat there for the final 5 minutes of their classes watching that second, especially if it's the last class of the day, watching that second hand just go tick. That's what 3 o'clock class felt like. But an analog display teaches you the relationship between these two things, which is why a lot of aviation displays are now back to electronically presented analog. The fuel gauges or the fuel pressure switches are doing this. They're not reading out numbers because if they're reading out numbers, you can't tell how fast things are going up or down. You can't just get a sense for it. And people think like this is smart, like it's a smart thing to do. Like, wow, we're going to get rid of analog clocks because we are in the future now. No, you're getting dumber. You're getting dumber. It's about relationships. And by the way, how hard is it to teach somebody time? Okay, really. Forget the minute hand. Just get the minute hand out of it. Okay? Look at the little hand. What number is it past? That's what hour it is. Right? Has it passed the 1? Yes. Has it gotten to the 2 yet? No. Well, then it's 1 something, right? And then the same thing with the minute hand. Has it passed the 15 yet? No. Has it passed the 10? Yes. Well, then it's between 2:10 and 2:15. It's just all of this stuff. All of this stuff is about the relationship of things. And people who have to ask ChatGPT I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. Really can't tell you how many times I've seen this. One of them is harder than the other. One of them is just ridiculous. I, honest to God, have heard people say, many times, I've heard people say to other people, if you're going 60 miles an hour, how long would it take for you to go 60 miles? And they, for the life of them, just can't answer. They're just guessing. They're not working the problem out. That's another point I'm trying to make. They're not trying to work out the problem. They don't know, so they just guess. 2 hours, 30 minutes, 20 minutes. They're just guessing because they never learned how to figure out how to work out the problem. And that's not, if you're traveling 60 miles an hour, how long does it take you to travel 30 miles? The answer is built into the question. You'd be amazed how many people cannot answer the question. This is what I'm talking about by not being able to. No idea. Well, why would they have an idea? They can't name China as another country. Right? No idea, none. What country, when did the War of 1812 happen? I don't know, 1930? This should scare the living daylights out of you. It scares the daylights out of me. It scares me more than anything that's out there right now. What what doesn't terrify the stupidity scares me. The indifference to the stupidity terrifies me. Really, really terrifies me. And there was another example like that. Oh, this one's a little more. This one's a little more interesting. I'm not sure I get this right. Yeah, I think it's this. It's pretty simple. Let's say we're in a bicycle race and I'm in second place and you pass me. What place are you in? 95% of the people say first place. Nope. What do you mean? No, you're wrong. You're in second place. Yes. And I pass you. Yes. Then that means I'm in first place. No. No. If I'm in second place and you pass me, now you're in second place. It's just crazy. It's crazy. So anyway, back to Marusha's question. Should we regulate rights according to not even cognitive ability so much as just whether you're thinking or not? Bill, how many 2-cent stamps are there in a dozen? There are 12 2-cent stamps in a dozen. So, look, the problem with this kind of thing, like having there's two problems. With having like do you have to have a certain amount of cognitive ability to pass a test in order to vote? One of the problems is who sets the boundaries, and the other one of them is how do you enforce that? I mean, let's say you need to have a 90 IQ in order to vote. What do you say to somebody who scores a 98, an 89, who takes the test, who grades the test, all of the possibilities for corruption and political manipulation and gaming the system and all of this stuff? Got 'em Coach says, which weighs more, 1,000 pounds of feathers or 1,000 pounds of bricks? Obviously, they both weigh the same. I've heard people say that the actual answer is no, it's actually the bricks because they're denser or what. Now, 1,000 pounds of one thing is 1,000 pounds of another thing, and that's and people will go to their grave on this. So yeah, this cognitive decline is not just accelerating; it's acceleration is velocity squared, right? So this is going at velocity cubed. Now, if you never took mathematics, you wouldn't know what that means, and you wouldn't know what that line looks like. It would have no meaning to you. If you say something, well, this is it's accelerating, and then it was accelerating at the square. Now it's accelerating at the cube. You would think, well, I guess that must be a little faster from the way the guy's talking about it, but that doesn't mean you got that right. To me, the voting thing is it's not a question of cognitive ability. It's a question of specific education. I don't think you should be able to vote unless you can pass the U.S. citizenship test. Just pass it. You don't have to get 100 on it. Natasha got 100 on it. Natasha wouldn't take the test. When you go for your naturalization exam, after you've been a resident alien for a long, long time, you will have to take a test in order to become a U.S. citizen. You'll get asked 10 questions. You have to get 6 of them right. And those 10 questions are randomly drawn from a pool of 100 possible questions. So Natasha didn't want to take the test until she got all 100 of the questions right. And she didn't. So we just studied until we just read them again and again and again. She didn't memorize them. She wanted to know how they worked, and she had a good teacher in that regard. So she got 100 out of 100. By the time we were finished studying, she was getting consistently 100 out of 100. And that's when she went to take the test. She got 10 questions, and needless to say, got them all right. But even I'm perfectly willing to say 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10. The basics. Yes, Clavin was her tutor. Thanks, David Boutte. I hired Andrew Clavin to teach her about American political system of government because he knows so much more about it than I do, and and he's just it's a bitter pill to swallow. But you have to know how the machine works before you can operate the machine. Well, you don't have to, obviously. Look at all the commercial driver's license that are issued to people who not only didn't take commercial driving tests, they couldn't pass just a regular driver's. They couldn't pass the test for their learner's exam. And people who take things seriously take those tests seriously. My private pilot test, I got a 90, I think I got 97 or a 98 on. And on my instrument test, I got one less. It was either 98, 97 or 97, 96. And that was the hardest thing I had to do. That you want to talk about 60 miles an hour, how far do you go in an hour? That is like you're on a bearing of 135 degrees. There's a wind from 180 degrees. It's 7 knots, and you have to calculate the arrival time at a location that's 46 miles away. It was pretty intense. Now, in a case like that, I would prefer to just look down at a GPS screen and have the GPS tell me how much time to get to that location. But in order to do that math, I had to understand the concepts involved. I had to understand vector math, as Roadrunner says. I had to understand that I was going this way at this speed. There was a force acting on the airplane that was doing that at that speed, deflecting the vector, all of that. And once I understood it, then it doesn't really hurt so much to get an easy answer, but you got to understand it first. And there is none of this stuff. Kirk's Bamboo Bazooka says there can be no 1175 for an hour only has 60 minutes. You could argue there is an 1175, I guess, but to your question, you're outnumbered about what's easier to say and conceptualize. No, there's not 1175. 1175 is 1215. And see, that wasn't that hard. Air Techie says, I once took the Navy aviator's exam once as a dare, thought it was interesting, but it didn't make me sweat a bit. Well, you're a smart guy, Air Techie, and I'm not being facetious. Hey, Lord Bios checked in. Lord Bios, we're talking about the catastrophic collapse of cognitive ability. If for no other reason than then students are saying to their teachers, why do I need to know how to read? Why do I need to know how to read? If there's something I need to read, I'll have the AI just read it out to me. I want to know what kind of parent allows their kids to be that damaged. Sycopolin says, I took a celestial navigation test once knowing I would fail, but I wanted to know what I didn't know. See, and you got smarter because of that. Sycopolin, you got smarter because and just the fact that you did it knowing you weren't going to pass my hat is off to you, sir. Off to you. I understand the basic concepts of calculus. I understand that calculus essentially is a series of points on a gradation on a curve, and I understand in like a vague way what it is calculating, and the just the basic difference between integral and oh, come on, and the other one. But at least I know what they are. I know that there are two different kinds of calculus: integral calculus and my friend Phil Trick knows how to do calculus, and that impressed the living daylights out of me. And if I had a lot of time, I would sit down and I would take classes, and I would thank you, differential. I would I would I would like to be able to take math again from where I was I was pretty comfortable with algebra. I certainly got the basics of trig. But once we started getting into equations that had, sine, cosine, and tangent and stuff, but I know what a sine wave is, and I know what a cosine is, and I know what a tangent is, and how can you understand expressions like I went off on a tangent if you don't know what a tangent is? It's just, it's phenomenal. It's amazing. How can you determine? I mean, let's just take basic trigonometry, okay? Right angles. Oh, got him, coach. You gotta. We have an audience, do we? Well, look, guys, I'm 66. In April, I'm going to be 67, and I've been studying this problem for 6 or 7 years, and I don't see any hope for people who are in the, generally 6 to 7 years old. Those people are lost. I haven't seen this level of social upheaval since, I don't know, 1967, somewhere in there. So anyway, there's that. Let's move on. Ian Nolan. Ian, I'm sorry. Apparently, I've slandered you. 45 years. George Freeland, did you get that from me? Or are you independently a fan of Harry and Paul? Because I have not met a single person other than you who is a friend of Harry and Paul. 45 years. Harry Enfield and Paul Whitehouse to me are they're my second favorite comedy duo. And I like very much like Mitchell and Webb. I was thinking about this the other day, and in terms of affection, it's Harry and Paul, Mitchell and Webb, and so on. But if I were gonna kind of count the greatest comedy duo of all time, I'd have to go with people who I'm not nearly as personally fond of. I just think they're best, and that is Key and Peele. Key and Peele are comedy geniuses. They have so many sketches that are just brilliant, and there's no denying it. They're both brilliant comic actors, really brilliant comic actors, and I know they have writers and stuff, but the performances are what makes that, and they are just incredibly good actors. So yeah. What was it? Yeah, they're absolutely crazy brilliant. What was the name of the character? Go ahead, Chantrell. Was it Chantrell? Something like that. Where it's a bunch of gangsters, and one of the homies had a guy get killed, and he starts crying, and Keith says, "No, don't you laugh at him. He was crying. This is real love." And Peele is talking about how they used to play Care Bears when they were little kids, and just gets more and more hilarious, and they're trying hard not to laugh. It's just wonderful. Fry and Laurie are great, but Mitchell and Webb. Just personally, if I could hang out with any two guys, it'd be Harry and Paul. Paul Whitehouse, Johnny Depp said he was the best actor he ever saw in his life, and I agree with him. I thought they were great, and they did a series called something and Ted. They did like 30 installments of it. It was about a kind of a he was gay, but he wasn't. That really wasn't the issue. He was a lonely boy who owned this English manor house, and Ted was his landscape guy and gardener, and it was about the relationship between these two. Somebody in Ted, come on, Bill. Anyway, there's so much nuance in that. And by the way, well, he is on television, isn't he? The guy who played the other guy is the guy who played that guy. The guy who played Bunny in the Queer series that Harry and Paul did was the guy who played the English Lord in those previous sketches that were from the Fast Show, I think. It's just a thing of beauty. But anyway, there you go. All right, Ian Nolan. For your information, it wasn't I who debated the Gen Z thing with you. I believe it was the person after my question. Sorry about that, Ian. I didn't mean it. It was. I just remembered it badly, so sorry about that. For the most part, you and I agree on most major items. It's generally minor points we dispute. Case in point, I agree that chemtrails are just contrails, but I also think elites are spraying crap in the air. James O'Keefe just got video at Davos of elites admitting they are trying to engineer the climate via aerosols. By the way, it sounds like Glenn Beck is going on the warpath against Bondi unless he sees some actual action. He's not the only one who feels that. One of the things with the global warming thing, right after 9/11, for about a week, there was just no air travel in the U.S. It was shut down for 2 or 3 days at least, just shut down, and then slowly brought back up, and it took a while to get back into place. And some guy who was doing research on climate noticed that the temperature spiked during that time. And the reason it spiked was because the high-level contrails had just stopped. And I had thought about this quite a lot. And I realized if you really want to cool the planet, especially since it's the northern hemisphere, then you could, in fact, just simply inject water. And it doesn't take a lot of water, just to inject water into the engines, or just outside the engines, and that'll produce more contrails, and that'll cool the planet. And it's not, it's actively cooling the planet. It's cooling the planet like with an umbrella rather than changing the chemistry of the atmosphere. Now, if they're saying that they're trying to manipulate the climate by aerosols, I think cooling the climate by aerosols is a great idea. But what they didn't admit to was they didn't admit they're trying to poison the population. And this is my point. The amount of diffusion of a gas from 30,000 feet. That's what I said. It's a lot easier to kill an ant or a beetle than it is to kill a human. And if you're going to kill beetles, you've got to spray them 4 or 5 feet above the leaves in order to get enough poison on them to do the job. That's why the guys who fly lowest, some of the best pilots in the world, the crop dusters, these guys fly 5-6 feet above the corn. Because if they flew at 10 feet above the corn, the dispersion of the chemicals would be less effective. And if they flew at 1,000 feet, it would be zero effective. And if they flew at 30,000 feet, it would be hilarious. So that's the contrails thing. I don't know if they are. I'm all in favor of using, of all the means of dealing with, with the global warming to the degree that it's there, to the degree that it's a problem, and to the because I don't think much of it is man-made, but whatever. We certainly can disagree about that. But if you want to cool the planet down, this is the way to do it. Because number one, those jets are already up there. It's easy to do. Secondly, and much more importantly, it is a solution that does not have irreversible long-term consequences. If you put dust in the upper atmosphere and that stuff stays up there for 20 years and all of Murphy's Law and all of these unintended consequences come about, then you're boned. And it doesn't cost $20 trillion to build a giant, sunshade. If it turns out you're getting results that you don't like, you just stop doing it. And you don't have to pay extra for those flights. Those flights are happening all the time. Just, a couple of little water injection jets, and you could seriously put a dampener on the amount of sunlight hitting the northern hemisphere, and I don't know. I don't know how often you'd have to do it. Be nice to have clear sunny days, but there you go. But there'll be water molecules in the atmosphere. Yes, water vapor is a much stronger, much stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is. And the entire argument against carbon dioxide is that carbon dioxide forces an increase in water vapor, and the water vapor does the heavy lifting because the CO2 is weaker than, much weaker than water vapor, weaker than methane. But carbon dioxide is something that you can tax. So there's the answer. Gotham Coach says, Bill, why haven't you ever addressed the nation about what they're spraying to the nation? Both parties never explain nada. I don't think they're spraying anything, Coach. I just don't. Markman says the aluminum that they're spraying falls to earth and stays in the soil that's causing the problem. I don't know a single pilot, not one. I do not know a single. I know many pilots. I don't know a single pilot, commercial, general, or otherwise, who believes that contrails are chemicals being sprayed from the sky for nefarious purposes. Not one. And you can take that for what it's worth. Braden Higbee, howdy from the free state of Idaho, and apologize for the long post. I'd like to talk about that church invasion in Minnesota. One of Don Lemon's comrades is a top aide to the DA, married a city council member, and running for a city council seat himself. Another is on the St. Paul School Board. The Minnesota Attorney General has defended the right of the protesters to invade a church. Waltz had the usual caveated denouncement. After an admittedly brief Google search, I couldn't find any national-level Democrat besides Waltz who has condemned this illegal protest. We almost know for certain that there will not be any state-level charges, but I highly doubt there will be any local ones. I think it's a clear violation of the FACE Act, but that is only a misdemeanor with a maximum sentence of 1 year for a first offense involving violence. It's a max of 6 months if the violation was prosecuted as nonviolent. There has been some mention of using the KKK law, but my understanding is for that to apply, prosecutors have to show animus against the protected characteristic. In this case, that's Christianity at large, not just the Christians at the church. I don't see how they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury from Minneapolis. Even a simple FACE conviction might be a bridge too far for a jury or a judge from Minneapolis. I guess my question is, how does the perception of equality before the law survive something like this? We had a 75-year-old woman thrown in the pen for 2 years under the same law, and we'll be lucky if these red guards get one. A refrain I've heard amongst the right is that if we only give the life a taste of their own medicine, they'll see what we've been living through and back off. I'm not sure that A, we even have the ability to give them a taste of their own medicine. I kind of agree with that. And B, that they actually care. In this case, you spend a year in jail, write a book, and come out a hero of the revolution on the other side. It's not like these people have jobs or families in the real world. Prison doesn't separate them from anything, and thank you for all you do. I don't know. Is it not at least trespassing? Is it not at least mischievous criminal intent. It doesn't matter if it's murder if the state, and I don't mean the state of Minneapolis, I mean the capital S state, doesn't, if the state declines to prosecute a law, then the law doesn't exist. I'm not. I'm a little more comfortable with it being in a church, what I'm about to say, because a church is a sacred place for quiet reflection. But I think, frankly, the answer to this kind of thing is, let's just say they barged into an American Legion meeting. Then it's up to the people in that meeting to pound the snot out of these guys. This is one of the great problems that's driving all of this societal decay, is that citizens know that if they get involved, they're going to be on the losing side of the law. So if I see somebody walking out of a Walmart with a shopping cart full of stuff that I saw them steal, just walking out, my inclination is to not let that happen. My inclination is to grab them and stop them and have somebody call the cops and wait till the cops arrive. And I think that'd be the inclination of most of the men in that store. But what prevents people from doing that is the understanding that if I try to stop a person, put my hands on a person who's trying to steal from the store, and I watch it happen, and it's clear, and all the people behind the counters are saying, hey, stop. If I try to stop that guy, I'm going to jail, not him. And that's the insanity. Now, Ron DeSantis has made an astonishing change in the state of Florida. Florida's outdoing Texas now. Not only are there stand your ground laws, but he's basically said, look, if you find yourself in a crowd on the road in your car and there's a crowd of people blocking your way, if you feel threatened by them, if they're moving on you or surrounding your car, gun it. And I said to myself, that's all it takes, man. This problem would go away. It would immediately go away across the country. Hey, Gary, immediately would disappear across the country if federal law said, if you are surrounded in your car or your road ahead of you is being blocked by a mob and it's clear that they are intending to stop you and might have violent intentions, run them, just go. The law will be on your side. If that were to happen nationwide, these idiotic things would be over. And people would have their freedom to protest, which they have as a constitutional right, on the side of the road. But this allowing people to block roads, allowing people to do these things is just ridiculous. Sickapollin says a Minnesota judge refused to give Bondi's DOJ a warrant for Don Lemon. Well, let's see if we can find federal charges for Don Lemon, who is a revolting individual. Watching Elon Musk getting interviewed by Don Lemon and firing him 20 seconds after the interview ended was just, chef's kiss kind of thing. It was just beautiful. He's a lunatic, and he's just a vile person. And I think this. The fact that Don Lemon was at this church thing is a big indication that Don Lemon is missing being famous very much. I think he's not at all happy with the fact that he is no longer on the air, and he's getting more and more outrageous and so on. Now, I did see a clip of, oh gosh, why can I not remember his name? Who's the Republican that's on CNN all the time? He's just terrific. The second I hear it, I'll know it. He's just great. Is it Jennings? Yeah, Scott Jennings. He was. There was a guy who was on CNN. I want to say 4 days ago, 4 or 5 days ago at the most, I think. Young liberal guy. Talking about Trump transparency was something, and then he said words to the effect of, Yes, it's good that Trump was transparent about this. I wish he'd be more transparent about the fact that he was running an underage child sex ring. And CNN just let it pass. They went to the next question. Jennings just stopped and said, "You going to allow that? You just going to allow that?" And the guy doubled down on it. Well, yesterday or the day before, the guy who said this said, "Hey, I apologize. I didn't mean it," or something like that, or it was a mistake or something. And then somebody pointed out, they said, "Yeah, well, you said it, and then you doubled down on it." And I think this guy is looking at a very real defamation lawsuit, like a big one. And that's one way you put an end to this kind of thing. Donald Trump has sued people for less than that, and he just openly said, Donald Trump ran an underage sex ring. And yeah, he did. P7 says, I didn't mean it. Yes, you did, because when he called you on it, you doubled down on it. So I hope he gets sued for a ton of money. A Roadrunner says that idiot said that it was provably true that Trump was guilty. That's just plain defamation and libel. And or is it slander? I guess it depends on, it's one if it's spoken, but it's also recorded. Slander is libel and libel is slander. But anyway, okay, moving on. Guy Balo. Greetings, Bill. Can assimilation be mandated, or does it have to happen naturally? There's a lot more to this question, but let me just stop right here. We shouldn't have to be asking that question, is the problem, Guy. And I'm going to read the rest of your question. But right there, I can say, we shouldn't have to be asking that question. Assimilation was and should be the goal of everybody coming here. It doesn't mean you have to lose your previous identity, but that's what you're coming here for. And the idea that you have to force somebody to assimilate into America is telling me that that person doesn't belong here. You are missing the point. And this applies to virtually all of the Somalis and a lot of the Muslims. It's like, well, we're going to take over the country, going to turn it into Islam, we're going to have Sharia law. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. And here in Los Angeles, all of the La Raza stuff, all of these, homies driving around talking about how the Reconquista, and the actual Reconquista occurred in Spain when the Spanish drove the Moors out in the 1460s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It took a while. It took almost 100 years for the Spanish to drive the Moors out of Spain. And this is why knowing history and geography is kind of helpful, because it gives you a larger perspective on life. 1492 is when it ended, Air Techie, because I know that's a year of some significance. Why do I know that 1492 is a year of some significance? Because I got an education, that's why. And that's a nice thing to have. Because now you can place things in their correct relationship. I know that happened before the Civil War. I know the Civil War happened before World War II. If you don't understand these relationships, then, boom. Morally and ethically, my position on this is, would what they want here be allowed to me if what they wanted here, I wanted in their country? And if the answer is no, then piss off. Somebody mentioned that they're making, Rockend said that they are making an Islamic city in Florida. Okay, I don't know where they came from, but could I make a Christian city in Syria? And if the answer is no, then okay, there you go. Fame Name is bringing up Bondi talking about the Epstein files, and that was simply the most appalling thing I've seen the Trump administration do from the bottom to the top. We get Dan Bongino back on the air on February 2nd. I think I'll be listening to that show. So, we'll see. Gotham coaches, at the end of the day, the ICE footage of deportations and viral videos are reaching around the world and are major detriments to not coming to the USA illegally. The ICE optic videos are working. Yes, border infiltration across the southern border has dropped to zero. Not kind of like lower than usual, it's zero. And there's some significant outflow because there's a lot of people who are here more or less honestly, who have decided they'd rather go back to Mexico and apply to enter the U.S. legally than be deported, because if you're deported, that's it. You're not coming back in. Back to the question. Can assimilation be mandated, or does it have to happen naturally? President Trump has taken several steps to encourage it, making English our official national language. 100% agree with that. No problem at all. Congress needs to make a law instead of just an executive order. Let me just deal with that real quick. I don't know what it's like for all of you guys, but here in California, I will say it's backed down a lot. But here in California, when you call a, electric company or whatever the case may be, you get the introduction thing. And for a while there, it said, press 1 to hear this message in English, press 2 to hear this message in Spanish. And it pissed off a lot of people. It pissed me off too. I don't need to press 1 to hear this in my own language. Now it just says, para llamada en español, marque el dos. And okay, I'm kind of okay with that. But then it begs the question, okay, so if this is the danger. The danger isn't that the U.S. is going to become multilingual. The danger is that it could become bilingual. That's the threat. You don't hear, you don't hear it in German. Push 3 for this in German. Press 4 for it in Japanese. Press 5 for it in Chinese. Press 6 for it in French. You don't hear that. It's just to hear it in Spanish, and bilingual America will be the end of America. In the same way that bilingual Canada is the end of Canada. When you look at anything that comes from the government of Canada and it's printed in both languages and it's just there twice, it's like, why don't you guys just sort that out and just get an end to it? Just sort it out. You can't be a bilingual society. You can't be a bicultural society. It has never worked anywhere ever. So there's that. English is the national language of the United States. And if you have a large Spanish-speaking population, as we do here in not only in California, but in Florida, all the southern states, a business wants to do business. And I guess since it's a business, I don't have any problem with the business saying, marque el dos. But government business, official government business needs to be in English. And what they found was all of these English second language courses, ESL courses, that were designed to teach English to students actually made them much less proficient in English. That it basically, instead of it easing them into it, it basically gave them a way to slide. When other waves of immigrants came to this country, they had to learn English, and because there was no choice. You had to learn it. And the reason assimilation worked in the past, Guy, is because the families that came here were the ones that did the enforcing. It's a legendary trope. It's been in God knows how many movies. But you see these stories about immigration in the early 1900s, let's say, or Italian immigration, and mom and dad are Italian. They speak Italian in the household, but they speak English with the kids and never speak Italian with the kids, and they demand that the kids speak English. You're an American now, and this is the language, and so on. And I thought that system worked really well. I thought it worked really well. So, Aussie Drone Guy says, all our official forms at the welfare office in Oz are printed in half a dozen languages. Diversity is our strength. Diversity is not our strength. That's just, it's as much of a lie as Islam is a religion of peace. It's just plain propaganda. It's a lie. It's a fascinating question because I deal with this a lot lately. I've been doing a lot of work with with the costumes on these characters. Gotham Coach says, Bill, is it gray or gray? Gray or Grey? I actually spell it both ways. I think the English prefer Grey and Americans prefer Gray. I honestly go back and forth. And here comes John with a $99 super chat. Once again, out of the clear blue sky, just drops in like the stork of plenty, and once again we're gobsmacked. Thank you very much, John, for that $99.99 super chat. That just every single time just completely bowls me over, and everyone else in the comments on both sides, both on chat and YouTube. So once again, sincere thanks, and yeah, very much. I've often thought, just as a quick aside here, before I get back to finishing this question, I've often wanted to sit on a English American spelling consolidation committee. I don't really want to do that because I kind of like the difference, but many times I'll debate who's got it right. And I think most of the times Americans have it right, but not all the times. Like, should theater be spelled Theatre as it was in my theatry department? Yes. Is a lift better than an elevator? Aluminum or aluminium? I just find it interesting. I just try to find out who's got a better case on some of these things whenever it comes up. The one I can't stand is whilst. I just find that archaic. What's the other one that's very similar to that? Something ST. I don't know. I just think it's fun. It'd be fun to trade them like baseball cards, Is this a hood or is this a bonnet? Is this the trunk or is this the boot? Infidel says aluminum is systematically correct. It was isolated from alumina. The Brits are adding an extraneous letter I to sound posh or Latin or something. Thank you for that. Because you would think with titanium, magnesium, all of that stuff, you would think that would end, uranium, radium, you would think it would be aluminium, but aluminum is from the root, which I love. So, pound sand, you limey bastards. Anyway, there you go. So back to the question. Securing the border and deporting everyone who came here illegally, what can be done to encourage those immigrants who are technically citizens but haven't assimilated into American culture to do so? What other steps can be taken to attract only legal immigrants who want to come here and become American citizens to help improve our great country? Well, my wife is one of those people. And she improves the country enormously, especially the area of it where I live. Side point, every time someone says they didn't commit any crime other than crossing the border illegally, we need to remind them that crossing the border illegally is a deportable offense and that said criminals need to be deported immediately. We cannot allow the Democrats to control the issue like they always do. Any thoughts? Well, it turns out that Obama, deported 3 million people and nobody raised a peep about it. So all of this is political theater and posturing and all the rest of it. But yes, at this point, I think you just run ICE in there and you do your job and you let them seethe and go insane. And they're going insane. And they're openly calling for the murder of ICE agents and so on. And those people need to be prosecuted for making death threats, credible death threats. And the progressives are having it's not even a nervous breakdown. It's a complete collapse of their psychological architecture. They're just losing it. And they're talking about leaving the country and having a ready bag, for the time that that the Gestapo comes, kicks their doors down. I said, march on, dude. If your history is so poor that you can't see the difference between Nazi Germany in 1930 and United States in 2026, if you can't see the difference, not the similarities, they're trying to make it the similarities. Well, what's the difference between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler? Well, let's start with the beer hall push. Donald Trump didn't launch a violent revolution to become president of the United States when he was 24, or in 1924, rather. Let's just start with that. And then, of course, there's millions of people who were murdered by the Nazis. Who Donald, if it weren't for 12 million people killed in death camps, then the difference between Hitler and Trump would be virtually indistinguishable. If it weren't for those 12 million dead people, and they do that. They compare Trump with Hitler because they think it will lower Trump, and all it does is excuse Hitler. It just makes Hitler just another politician you don't agree with. So, all right. So anyway, Guy, I think the debate has shifted strongly in our favor. The idea of deporting people prior to November of 2024, I just never thought we'd see it. And the left is so used to getting their way either quickly or just incrementally that when this is the first time they've actually gone backwards in my lifetime, that they've actually lost ground, and they don't like it, and they're never going to like it. So if we're going to get called all these names, then I say, well, we just go ahead and do it, and they can suffer the consequences. There are a lot of left-wingers who are saying now, oh, it's time to get a gun. It was time to get a gun a long time ago, and I don't think they're ever going to. I don't think 99% of the people who say I want to buy a gun are going to actually go buy a gun, because they're terrified that it'll jump out of the closet while they're sleeping and shoot everybody in the house. But I have seen, for example, it's a new organization that models itself after the Black Panthers, and I have seen a video of, 30, 35 black people wearing masks with AR-15s slung in front of them. And my thought is, well, they have a constitutional right to do that. And I'm not about to tell them that they can't have their guns. They are fully entitled to their guns. And if they want to march down the street with those babies, then congratulations, you've figured it out. In a way that white liberals will never figure it out. They will just never figure it out. And it comes down to cowardice. It's all cowardice. It's all personal cowardice. The idea, the whole defense of the whole defense of gang members, rapists, and murderers is a result of liberals, especially liberal women, not being willing to assume responsibility for defending themselves. So they can afford to be that stupid. Awfuls, affluent. What is it? Affluent. I forget what the W is. W, female liberals. Western, is it affluent Western female? I don't remember, but it's a great acronym. So there you go. Affluent, white, duh, of course. Affluent, white, female, urban liberals. Yep, got it. It's terrific. So anyway, Guy, yeah, I agree with you, but I think things are, they're definitely more moving our way than they were before. Let's see what happens with the rest of the year. Let's see if we can get that economic growth, the prices up, and the costs down. Maybe we can pull out these midterm elections. Even if we lose the midterms, I don't think. I think this is an executive issue, and if the courts don't, and by the courts I mean if the Supreme Court doesn't block Trump, because look, I'd rather be constitutional than win every time. If the Supreme Court ordered Donald Trump that he was not allowed to do something, then I would have to respect the opinion of the Supreme Court. If I don't, then I don't believe in the constitutional structure of the country, and I believe in that more than anything. But the president gets to appoint the justices, so having a court on your side. Having the courts, the presidency, the House, and the Senate means you can do anything, and we are halfway through that process. Well, we're 2 days into the second half of that process. There's a question over there. I just saw where to go. Fame Name says, have I seen Band of Brothers or Chernobyl on HBO Max? I've seen them both. Band of Brothers was the best thing I'd ever seen on TV until Chernobyl, which became the best thing I've ever seen on TV. They're absolutely terrific. Just absolutely terrific. I think Band of Brothers is probably it's certainly the better show, but I just have a particular fascination with Chernobyl and what happened there, and all the work I did on the Soviet Union and the communist system and stuff. And I thought HBO's Chernobyl was incredible, and that's when I began to realize that oh, come on, I'm just not a great memory night for me. Jared Harris is one of the greatest actors of our time. He's absolutely spectacularly good in everything he's in, and he was great in that. He was just absolutely great in that. And so was Kierkegaard. Dave says, what did I think of From Earth to the Moon? I didn't watch it, Dave. It didn't... I said Kierkegaard, I meant Skarsgård. I didn't watch it. I don't know why. I guess it just because it looked a little phony to me. Well, I mean, there are times when I'm sharp as a tack and times when I'm a little tired and my memory fades. Come on. Bryan Cranston had his face right there. Bryan Cranston played Buzz Aldrin in that series, if I remember correctly. And what's especially, I will tell you what I did like about not only about Earth to the Moon, but also to some degree in First Man and things like that. In From Earth to the Moon, during the Apollo landing sequence, they've recreated the actual dialogue between Buzz and Neil, which I've heard. I bet I've heard it 30 times. The landing. Right from the start of Powered Descent Initiative to the landing, to the touchdown landing, I've heard that transcript 20, 30 times. Thank you, Rough Ryan. That's the greatest compliment you could possibly pay me. That's a very, very, very kind thing to say. Thank you. But what's interesting is that on the TV show, you can hear, especially Buzz, because Buzz did all the talking. Neil's job was to fly the LEM, and Buzz's job was to do the call outs and altitude and all that other stuff. And you could hear Bryan Cranston, who's a great actor, putting drama into that dialogue, the pauses and the inflection and the drama. They're just adding drama. And I've often wondered if it's just me or whether this would apply to a general audience. I personally think it's much, much more interesting that these guys were as cool as they were. In the Apollo 11, what we saw show, I said, if you listen carefully, this will be the only time you ever hear Neil Armstrong come close to losing his cool. And what he says is, give us an update on that 1201 or 1202. That's it. Houston, give us an update on that 1202. And you can tell that he wants an answer, but he's not like, oh my God, a 1202. They just keep putting extra drama into it. And I think that's why that movie Midway, which I would have been the first person, I would have been sleeping out on the sidewalk to see the premiere of Midway. But from the trailers, you could just tell they made it into a cutscene from a video game because it's apparently not dramatic enough, that these guys they essentially won the war in the Pacific in 6 minutes. That's not dramatic enough. So you have to add so much flak and so much this and so much, it's just like all of this. It was not nearly as effective as the version that came out in the 70s, and I'd love to do that stuff realistically, because you just overload people. It doesn't make it more dangerous to have the sky just completely orange. It's just, they've seen, wasn't it Best, who, he couldn't have gotten two carriers because the dive bombers only carried one bomb. Maybe he got one later in the war. Something. No, I don't know. But all of it is just, holy cow, man. Midway. I cannot wait to recreate Midway in the colonies. That's going to be my favorite part, I think. That and Taffy 3, both of which we will recreate faithfully. So anyway, there we go. Capital G Geek, Jacob Belchek, Bill Thompson, Bro College student, Eric Blake. Okay, we got to move here. Okay. Capital G Geek, greeting from the swamps of Northern Virginia. America is exceptional. No kidding. America ranks third in the world for the total number of geniuses, above 130 IQ with 5.2 million. China's first with 58 million, very questionable. And Japan is second at 6.7 million. South Korea has 2.8 million. Germany has 2.2 million. India, with a population of 1.4 billion, has less than 250,000. Americans are also self-selected for independence and risk-taking. Our frontier mentality also encouraged non-standard problem-solving and creativity. Yes. That changed a while ago, probably starting with industrialization. I had hoped that the tech revolution would have brought back some of that back, but is quickly absorbed into the financialism that runs everything else. Do you see a way for us to get that back individually, if not as a country? Well, one of the things that, in fact, the single thing that I find myself much more at ease personally and much less anxious about things since I've made this hard pivot to getting the colonies out one way or another, because I get to live in that world now, and that world is the world that I want to see, and I have this just subconscious belief that this is exactly what's going to happen. I think probably the most striking thing about, and I'm trying to answer your question here, I think the most striking thing about the colonies is at no point do I have anybody with devices. None of them. None of them. They're just gone. They've got, wrist things, a bit like it's not a hologram projection like in Star Citizen, but they've got a wristwatch that basically functions as an information device, and you obviously need to communicate and remote, control things, get information, some entertainment, all that stuff. But they're not buried in their screens because they've got actual work to do, and they have to exercise because they're building a civilization. I was debating this. Thank you, by the way, Janie, for those comments. Very nice. And I've decided, the whole purpose of one of the many purposes of getting the colonies, amongst the purposes of getting the colonies going, is the ability to have a AI factory that really produced top quality work. I would like to be able to do Major Mace Mattingly one day, but I have decided that at the very least I'm going to transplant those four guys onto one of the naval ships. That I just like the characters, I like their faces, I like their backstories, and I'm just going to move them onto one of these next generation warships. The whole concept, like the meta concept as far as the combat, which I don't talk about much because I haven't developed it as much as the Pioneers thing. I had to learn the AI technology on something, and the Pioneers is just an easy way to do that. But the entire concept, I was thinking about this in the shower actually, is that the colonists are going to have to use the same metric that Americans used since the Cold War, and that is quality over quantity. They don't have the manufacturing base for quantity. They have to go with quality. So they have to have they have to have better gear, revolutionarily better gear, and I found out a way to do that. So yeah, and I'd love to talk to you about that, Air Techie. Just contact me at info@billwhittle.com, and we'll take care of that. I'm gonna I'm gonna come back to this question. I saw two things here that I wanted to take care of. First of all, there's a super chat from looks like Jake Bobenreith, who said, "Bill, did you hear that San Francisco city government has demolished Fisherman's Wharf? Not surprised. It used to be an absolute tourist trap, and it was a wonderful place. But they didn't enforce the laws, and you could, crap on the streets, and you could smash the windows, and nobody did anything, and so, it's gone. So congratulations, San Francisco. You got what you voted for." Also, a cool video that I think you'd find cool is "Fly Me to the Moon." It's a Kerbal cinematic. I'll come back to you, Capital G Geek, and maybe we can pick this up again on our Monday show, Jake. But I would have gotten, I know this is just a personality quirk. Is Marusha Dark here tonight? I don't remember seeing the name. I think I would have massively gotten into Kerbal Space Program, massively, except that I cannot handle the Kerbals. You've got something that's so realistic and so absolutely physics-based, and you can fly from the Earth to the moon. You have to carry the right amount of fuel and all the Delta VS, all of this stuff. And then these little Kerbals get out, and it's like, oh, it's a joke. I can't believe that they haven't made a mod for, basic humans on that. So it's just a personal taste. It's like anime. It's just like, oh, okay, what a shame. I'm not even bashing the Kerbals. I mean, I get it, and I've seen the animation for Kerbal Space Program 2, where things fall over and stuff, and it's clever and it's cute and everything. And Infidel says it's not a joke; it's whimsical. All of that's fine. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying it. For me, it kills it. It just kills the cool for me. Just me. But that's there's that. And then the other one I wanted to do is Fame Name says, "Hey Bill, can I ask you some questions about the moon landing? Genuine, hard-hitting questions I don't think I've ever heard you address before." I'll tell you what, if you're still there, Fame Name, when I get through the last of the questions, which will be Eric Blake as usual, hit me back and we'll spend 10-15 minutes on that at the end there. So there you go. Yes, the Colony Show is to inspire the next generation to become physicists, to make all this stuff, future stuff, a reality, just like Star Trek was in our generations. Exactly. And that's why I have such problems with things like the Spore Drive, because it's fantasy written by people that don't know anything about science. It doesn't inspire any sense of science. When I'm done with this lecture on the quantum substructure, it's going to drive a lot of people into quantum physics, because they're going to want to build these things. And I have been researching stuff I've been researching faster than light travel since I was 15, so 6-7 years now, something like that. So let's see, Jacob Belchek. Hail Bill, hail Jacob. Appreciate you taking my question a couple weeks back. I know it was sharp and pointed. I hope we can still be buds. We're always buds, dude. I'm happy to disagree, and it's a pleasure to disagree with people of such quality. I wanted to ask if you have any insight on the nature of the average Republican politician. Trump has gained so much of the affection of the people that he has because we cannot spare this man. He fights, yes. I expect nothing but contempt for normal people to come from the left, but when I watch the way that Republican Congress critters operate, I hardly see a difference. It doesn't seem like a terribly hard calculation to me, when all they would have to do to have their constituency love them forever is to make a few good decisions and pick a few fights. You've been closer to big names in the Republican Party than I have been, at least so far. It seems to me that the left's Congress critters represents their base pretty well, but the rights are maybe 30% of what we all wish they were. What say you? Yes. politics is a left-wing domain. The best minds on the left go into politics. The best minds on the right go into business. Politics is a lazy way to get money and power. It is much easier to tax a business than it is to start one, run one, grow one, uh, and and so even the Republicans who go to into politics go into politics with that kind of sense of self promotion. There are some exceptions, but clearly the biggest one, certainly in our lifetimes, is Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan cut from the same cloth too. Ronald Reagan struck me as a guy who didn't need to be in politics. He was famous. He was a handsome guy. He was a movie star. He got into politics because he traveled the road and did the General Electric tour, and he realized that America was in trouble, and so he stepped forward. Donald Trump is the only guy in the history of the country, I think, that's, with possible exception of George Washington, who took a pay cut, a big one, in order to be president. He doesn't. The reason he's not corrupt is because, and the reason he's uncorruptible is because he already has all of the fame, fortune, and perks of being rich. He went into the job that way. These Congress people and senators are usually small people who suddenly find themselves able to travel in private jets and have everybody bow and straight and kiss their butts for him. Donald Trump's had that his entire life. So the fact that Republicans vote like Democrats is because they, like Democrats, they just cannot get over being reelected. That's their number one priority. They're cut from the same cloth. They claim to have a different orientation, but for a lot of these kind of Republicans who go into politics because they have to go into politics, it's a question of, do you want a 12% tax increase or do you want a 4% tax increase? They're not like you and me. There's not many people who would be willing to go through just the sheer rigors and humiliation and exhaustion that goes into any kind of political fight, but especially a national level one. So what the Democrats have done is they've made this job so unspeakably brutal to pursue. You're going to get, everything is going to get dredged up. There's not a dirty trick that they're not going to use. There's not a lie that they're not going to tell. You have to be a really special kind of person to want to go through that. And I have believed from the beginning and believe to this day that that Donald Trump is doing what he's doing because he loves this country. And I knew that from the beginning, but once he got shot in Butler, that's when I really, not because of what happened afterwards. When somebody has shot at you and hit you, that's the instant you know what kind of person you're dealing with, right? That's the instant you know. And right there in Butler was a couple of great examples. A couple of those female Secret Service agents dove for cover and stayed down. Donald Trump was fighting his Secret Service agents so that he could stand up and put his fist in the air and say, fight, fight, fight. He didn't know if there was one shooter, 10 shooters. That's character right there. Its character is revealed in moments of crisis where all of the programming and rehearsals, if Gavin Newsom had been shot at, I bet you a significant amount of money his reaction would have been, how do I get off of this stage underneath as many security guards as possible? That's not what Trump did. He stood up. I mean, he just stood up. And there's no denying that. You can't rhetoric that one away. He's really different, and he doesn't need the seductions that politics provides. Politics gives mediocre people power and money, and that's why mediocre people are attracted to it, and that's why so many Republican politicians don't vote conservative, because if they were really genuinely conservative, Their entire job would be to do as much damage to the federal government and make it as small as possible so that 2 years later they could go home in glory. That's the kind of representative I would be. I would go to Washington. I would say on my first day, I am here for one term and I am going home. And my job between now and when I go home, 2 years from today, is to undo as much damage as I can that this government has inflicted upon the American people. But that would mean that I would have to go back to my previous life, which is a pretty fine frickin' life, man. It's really, really nice. And if you could get those kind of people into office, you would really have something. And by the way, if the Republican Party, I've said this before, I said it during the Obama years, and I said it during the Biden years. If I was the head of the RNC, my position for the Republican Party would be this. The Republican Party believes in citizen governorship. We believe that the people are capable of governing themselves. Therefore, it shall be the policy of every Republican politician that they shall serve one term in office. One term in office. They're not going to spend their second year in office trying to get reelected for their third year in office. It's just not going to happen. Now, if it turns out that somebody does an exceptionally good job and they find that they're good at it, then they can run for a different office. So if you're a Republican representative for 2 years and you do a good job, then you get a chance to run for the Senate. If you run for the Senate and you serve 6 years, then you are out of office. One term. You want to run for governor after that or president after that? Go for it. One term in office. That's the rule. That's what the Republican Party is. This immortal bureaucracy and this immortal government has destroyed this country. And if the Republican Party would come out and commit to one term, then we would absolutely own this country. If we really did it, I think it'd be over. I think we get 80% of the vote if we made that promise and stuck to it. And I think that that they should simply say, hey, if somebody decides to go for a second term, they are not a Republican anymore. They can call themselves a Republican. We will officially denounce them. We will primary them, and we will call them out on it. So, but that requires a moral foundation. It's actually very, very easy to do. And if you had that, I swear you would never lose an election if you openly said that was a policy of your party. I'd love to be president or chairman of the RNC and make that stick. Now, Dave Big Boutte says no one can be trusted to make that decision. We need an Article 5 Convention of the States. Okay. I am very concerned about the Convention of the States because I've seen the left game everything. I've seen them cheat everything. I see the voter fraud. I see all of it. And to me, it seems like an opportunity to undo the basics, to have the Second Amendment outvoted, the First Amendment outvoted. It's going to take, there's no position I hold that you can't talk me out of, but that one's going to take some work. So there's that. Okay, moving on here. Bill Thompson. Hi, Bill. Last time I bothered you was with the question way back in the time over target days, but it was fun. I saw one of those the other day. I saw on my hard drive. I backed up and saw that. By the way, just as a quick note, Copy Shinato says Florida governor can serve more than 2 terms, but not consecutively. I might be willing to hear the argument about non-consecutive terms because Donald Trump had 4 years to think about what he was going to do in his second term. And if he'd gone straight from his first term to the second term, the way that would have happened if the law had been followed, then he would have been much less effective. Anyway, back here. Last time I bothered you with a question was way back in the time over target days, but I've been a faithful listener all along. Thank you, Bill. That's very kind of you. My question is as follows. How can we get the swamp creatures properly in prison with a judicial system that is still stuffed with liberal to Marxist judges? They subvert the Constitution and the rule of law at every turn. Random judges throw roadblocks in front of every action the president makes. What can be done to get the bent judges thrown out and in prison? I'm concerned that without that crucial first step, nothing further can be done. Just today, for example, Don Lemon apparently isn't going to be incarcerated. People are asking me why I'm not going to, would I run for California governor? No, I don't have any desire to do that. I don't have any time or desire to do it. I just don't want the job. And the same goes for, being a representative and stuff. Just real quick, Baron of Gray Matter says with a super chat, Republicans like to be losers. Problem is a Republican in Illinois represents different and less fervent people than, let's say, Texas. Reps are pussies. Yeah, that's exactly right. So the judge's issue for Bill, it seems to be on the top level that, and I think this is appropriate, because I'm not a lawless guy who believes in power for power's sake. As I mentioned earlier in the program tonight, if the Supreme Court were to make a ruling tying Donald's hands on one thing or another, then as a constitutionalist, I have to support that even if I don't like it. That's how the system works. That's the definition of checks and balances. But the idea that the President of the United States can be stopped by any regional judge or not even judges, that somebody can make a ruling and put a freeze on this or put a freeze on that, Trump has pretty much ignored that. And I think and the Supreme Court seems to have supported the fact that the president can ignore those things. There's thousands of federal judges. You cannot have an executive when you've got thousands of people who, more than half of which are opposed to you, have a kill switch on it. It's just plain no. So the answer is no. As far as the judges on the local level and stuff, it looks like Don Lemon isn't going to be incarcerated. Well, there's only one answer for this, and the answer is that the people of Minnesota are going to have to get what they voted for good and hard until it's clear to them, what they've got. And this is why I think the single most important thing that we have not done that we should do before, look, we've got another 8 months, 9 months. We absolutely have to get the voting system fair and legal and repeatable and verifiable before the 26 elections. It has to be done. It's the most important thing. It's the most important thing by far, because if it turns out that the people of Minnesota are actually against this, but the votes keep going mysteriously to these far left lunatics, then they will never vote themselves into sanity. They're voting themselves into sanity now, and it doesn't matter who votes; it matters who counts the votes, right? So, I would say that's the most important thing. Make sure that elections can be free and fair, and then trust the system to allow people to vote themselves into the kind of catastrophe that it would take to get them to change the way they vote, because certainly not going to change the way they're going to vote through reason and logic. Politics for the left is about psychological self-identity. It's not about policy. It's about psychological self-identity. If they had been told that Russia were the good guys in the Russia-Ukraine war, then they'd all have Russian flags on their Facebook pages. There's nothing consistent about it. There is no moral absolute, in the way that just a few moments ago I said, if Donald Trump was overruled by the Supreme Court, then the president has to obey that law, even if it was something that was really, really good for the country. Yes, the rules matter. The rules are there to protect us from ourselves, and so I'm a big believer in the rules, and it's the abandonment of process that's getting us shellacked, because the process is, in my opinion, just from the reality of the number of times I've had to deal with a political issue and look at what the Constitution actually said rather than what it's being interpreted as, and I cannot escape the conclusion that it's a divinely inspired document. There's just no way that I can reason that there was that much wisdom built into a system, despite the fact that, was it Jeff Foxworthy said America designed by geniuses, run by idiots. So there you go. Baron of Green Matter says the next election is always the most important. We can't change the past, and future elections beyond the next are also not in our control. I will say, for what it's worth, I'm not arguing with you, having heard that this is the most important election of my life for 40 years now of being aware of politics. There's no question in my mind that of the course of elections in my life, the two most important elections in my life were the election of 1980 and the election of 2024. Those two elections were the most important elections of my life, and if I had to pick one, I would say 2024. I thought that was the most important election in the history of this country. So there's that. Okay, so let's get going here. Broke college student, and then we got Eric Blake, and then we'll do some moon landing real quick if we're still around. So broke college student, your material you showed on Monday looked good. Best of luck with it. I hope it works out. Thank you. You mentioned on Monday's stream about potentially doing a recurring Gen Z focused stream. I think that would be a great idea. I'm 24, married, have a house, and we have our first on the way. Congratulations. So I don't think I qualify for a lot of negative stereotypes associated with Gen Z. I'm actually, one of the reasons I want to do it, broke college student, is I want to find out just what percentage of Gen Z actually possesses those qualities of those negative stereotypes. There is such a thing as a silent majority, and I'd be very curious to know what that ratio is. But I do think I have enough inputs from younger guys to give a fair representation of the more substantial grievances. I'm sure the other excellent Gen Z members can do the same. Per last week's show, I think you and others can misinterpret the points being made or straw man the arguments. To give you an example to try and clarify, the advice of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. There was a recent article about young white men being blocked from various possessions starting around Obama's presidency. It's absolutely true. There's more to the question. But you cannot pull yourself up by your bootstraps if the law prevents you from doing it. If you go to the trouble and effort, the entire pull yourself up by the bootstraps argument is, if you work hard enough, you will achieve your goal, which is the definition of meritocracy. If you're not good enough for it, get good enough for it. If you're not good enough player, then get better. So pull yourself up by your bootstrap means, yes, I'll do the work, I'll get better. But if you do the work and get better and you're still blocked, legally blocked, culturally blocked, then the bootstrap argument doesn't exist anymore. And it's absolutely true what the point he's making, and it's absolutely true that the Gen Zers are right about this, and it's absolutely true that most older people don't understand what happened. It's not a question of laziness or lack of effort. It's a question of realizing that the effort will be pointless. And so it is, in fact, a stupid thing to do, to put an enormous amount of effort into something that you know in advance is not going to work. So I couldn't agree with you more. The true geniuses among the young white men, by working harder, may have been able to get those positions, but they still would have been blocked from advancing far in their careers, and so many others would not have gotten those positions. It comes across as tone deaf. Absolutely. For the other members, I've included a reply some Gen Z and older guys I listen to that I think are much more serious critics than someone like Fuentes. And here's a bunch of YouTube channels: Connor Tomlinson, Jay Burden, Prudentialism, Dave Green, Benjamin Boyce, and Aaron McIntyre. I will screen cap this, and I will start watching them, because we were talking about this collapse of cognitive ability, and that's really affecting the alphas more than Gen Z. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So thanks very much for that, broke college student. I'll check those guys out, because I a lot of times have renderings that go on, and it takes a while. So there you go. Eric Blake, tonight the case of the Davos dividends. So Bill, straight to the point, what are your thoughts on the major results of Trump's endeavors at Davos regarding Greenland and apparently a new alternative organization to the UN? That last one kind of caught me off guard a bit, and I'm very curious if anything's ultimately going to come of it. I didn't follow anything at Davos, Eric. Greenland is, I don't know if Greenland is a giant troll. I mentioned either last show or the last Thursday show that that I would kind of like to have Greenland. I found out since then, by the way, that when we got the U.S. Virgin Islands from the Danes, one of the conditions was that we would give up any claim on Greenland, and I'm beginning to think that maybe wasn't such a great deal now. But as I said before, I'm American. I'm proud to be an American. I'd like to see the country grow. I like the idea of the U.S. expanding. I like all these things. Clearly, there's the resources, and there's very, very important strategic, military, and national security issues in Greenland. But when it comes down to it, dude, when it comes right down to it, if the people who live in Greenland don't want it, then there's no way I can be okay with it. If they don't want to become Americans, then that's fine. We have easily got the money to make every single one of them a millionaire. If they turn that deal down, that's their business. They have a right to self-determination the same as we do. If Greenland doesn't want to become incorporated in some way, then I think we do what we've done with all of our other bases around the country, and we make them an offer, very generous offer, and simply lease access to the bases. Rather than taking over Greenland politically or making it a state, we simply go in there with American companies and we make a better deal than China can make or Russia or whoever else can make. And we go in there and we do what we were talking about doing with Ukraine when Trump first took office, which was we would take American companies into Ukraine. There'd be a buffer zone set up there, and then American companies would extract the wealth, and 50% would go to the Ukrainians, and 50% would come to us. It seems like a fair split. It's like you look at a place like Dubai, which looks like, Tomorrowland. It is beautiful. I've never been, but it's beautiful. You look at it, it's like, man, how come we don't have cities like that? Well, that is a result of sheer luck. I mean, they're on oil reserves. They did not build those buildings themselves. They don't maintain them themselves. And so it benefits Greenland and it benefits us, but just a flat-out invasion against their will, I don't want any part of that. I like being the good guys. I really like being the good guys. And I think that there's no way you could spin actually conquering Greenland. I don't think that Trump would ever try it. I would draw the line on that. And I think most people probably would. And you don't have to, man. I mean, America is the prom queen of the world. People constantly talk us about how I hate America, and there's no question that they do, but it's still the prom queen of the world. And the prom queen doesn't have to do that, You just make the most attractive offer that benefits the Greenlanders. I don't particularly care about what the Danes think about this. I was generally, I didn't know a lot about Greenland before the last election, but I was generally thinking, well, they run it like a colony, okay. And then I found out that the Danish government actually sterilized like half of the women in Greenland with these IUDs that made them permanently sterile, and apparently was done intentionally. That was the rumor I heard. I'm certainly not going to say that's what happened, but if that's the case, then I believe in self-determination. I really do, and I think it's up to the Greenlanders, meaning the people who live in Greenland. Eric says, Bill, you might want to look up the deal that Trump got. I will. I just can't do it right now. So there's that. Fame Name says, I want America, the America I knew as a boy, the good guy, the strong, the noble, the altruistic, the honorable. I agree, dude, 100%, completely agree. I think we could make an offer that'd be great for Greenland, great for the Greenlanders, and nevertheless, it's their destiny, and we don't have the right to force our will on them, and I don't think we have to. Okay, so that's the last of the questions. I don't want to spend too much time with this, but I don't get an opportunity like this too often, so let's just do 3 of them. Fame Name, you said you had some serious questions about the moon landing, so just as a fun exercise in critical thinking, why don't you give them to me? Just give me 3 of them. If I'm assuming they're objections to the moon landing. Give them to me one at a time if you can. please, and that's all we'll do, and then we'll call it a night. Then I just in case I ever have this happen to me on the spot. Okay, just got a unrelated text. So I'm just, let's see here. Somebody said on that last animation I did with Will and Jake that Will should have been smiling more, and it's true. I got a bunch of them. How is the official stance of NASA that they lost the telemetry data? Yeah, I've heard this before, that one of the criticisms of Apollo 11 is that they lost the telemetry data from the moon landing. I am not aware that they've lost the telemetry data of the Apollo 11 mission, but the telemetry data isn't relevant to what actually happened. For example, when the actual landing was televised, the data from NASA was piped directly out to the networks. The networks piped it out in real time to the American people. Most people were watching CBS at the time because Walter Cronkite was a very, very big advocate of the space program, and watching Walter Cronkite get teary-eyed when Eagle had landed was just one of the experiences of having watched the moon landing. I was 10 when it happened. I suppose it's possible that the telemetry data is gone, but that's not a deal breaker for any reason, primarily because, and this is something that I'll never understand why people don't get, let's say that the telemetry data, not the footage, the telemetry data from Apollo 11 somehow disappeared. Well, we still have the telemetry data from Apollo 12 and Apollo 14 and Apollo 15 and Apollo 16 and Apollo 17. So if the cover-up was to eliminate the telemetry data, like there was some sort of, like that would somehow cover some sort of, expose some sort of part of the conspiracy, then they didn't do a very good job of it. Telemetry data is essentially a digital signal. I said earlier in the show that I've listened to the what's called PDI, powered descent initiation. That's when the LEM starts its retro burn. It is still available. It's not missing a frame. I'll get you the link for it. And one of these is very, very good because it's got commentary going at the same time, and you know what's going on with the flight computers and all this other stuff. Yeah, this is Apollo Flight Journal. These guys are great. It's a 15-minute long video, and there's no interruptions. And what you will see and hear is what is happening out the window, and it's been put together by I don't know who Apollo Flight Journal is. If it's one guy, he's terrific. So he's put annotations on the audio and the video so that you can tell what's actually happening. So that's right there for you in YouTube, and it's here for you in Twitch. So again, I'm not convinced this actually happened. Could just be a rumor. There's a lot of propagation of rumors. But if it turned out that the telemetry data for Apollo 11 was in fact lost, then I don't see how that proves anything, given the fact that, yeah, AirTechie says it's on magnetic tape and it's 4 tracks. If it turns out that, oops, sorry, put that in the wrong place. If it turns out they were covering something, then why didn't they cover it on Apollos 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17? So what's the second one? How do we lack the manufacturing technology to recreate the Saturn V? Well, we don't lack the manufacturing technology. That's another, it's another straw man argument. We could rebuild the Saturn V, but there's no reason to rebuild the Saturn V. this is interesting. You'll get a kick out of this. One of the arguments about the moon landing is we couldn't have gone to the moon because we didn't have the computer technology. Well, as it turns out, we had the two most advanced computers in the world on the LEM during the landing, and that was Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin looking out the window. You got to remember that Neil Armstrong was a carrier pilot. Neil Armstrong was very, very used to flying forward and putting something down within. He's got 100 feet, man. He's got 100 feet to get that jet on the deck. So the human brain's ability to calculate just judgment and distance is great. Now, it turns out that they did in fact have a guidance computer that ran most of the flight. There were problems with that computer. There was a moment in time there that lasted almost 2 minutes where the computer was running overloads, and they weren't exactly sure of their altitude. And NASA said, it looks like we know what the problem is. The data's coming in too fast. You're still go. Count on the altitude data that your computer's giving you. And I'm getting to the Saturn V. So if you look at the Apollo 11 landing, there's another video on YouTube that synchronizes all 6 lunar landings so that they all touch down at the same time. And Apollo 11 starts much earlier because Apollo 11 by far landed with less fuel than anything that followed after it. He was down to about 12, 13 seconds of fuel. So the question is, they'll say, oh, well, why can't we rebuild the Saturn V? We can't rebuild the Saturn V because the Saturn V is obsolete. The whole point I was making about the computers on the landing and stuff is that there's nothing about the Apollo program that needed computerized speed and processing power of the power that we have today. There's nothing about it that required that kind of processing power because the LEM could touch down essentially anywhere. I mean, he literally had miles and miles and miles and miles in mostly in a forward and backward direction, but if it was flat, he could put it down there. But one thing is happening today that we did not have the technology to do in the 1960s, and that is catch the booster, or even catch the Falcon booster. In order to recover the booster, the Falcon 9 on the pads, or especially using the chopsticks on the Starship, that requires extraordinarily high levels of computational power because that rocket engine is constantly adjusting itself hundreds of times, well, certainly 30, 40 times a second. And all of the telemetry and all of that stuff that you could not hand fly, down a Falcon 9 to a landing pad without the computers that we have today. But you probably could get one to land somewhere in Nevada, let's say. So the entire business about we don't have the technology to be building this, Gummins sums it up much better than I do. If I told you, if you asked me, could we build a Model T tomorrow? I think the answer I'd probably give you would be no, because if we wanted to build a Model T tomorrow, if you're not familiar with the Model T, it's the first mass-produced Ford, right? It's the first mass-produced car in America. And if I said, I want you to build me a Model T, you mean you want me to get you a replica model? No, I want you to build one. Well, what it would mean is you would have to go back and retool everything in the factory to build the Model T. You'd have to cast the engine blocks. You'd have to bore out the cylinders. You'd have to get the original pistons. You'd have to get the original tires. You'd have to get all of it. So we couldn't build a Model T today. Although if our lives depend on it, yes, we could. When they say that we lost the technology to go to the moon, that's just not true. No one has ever said we've lost the technology to go to the moon. Nobody in the space program has ever said that. We lost the will to go to the moon. We lost the desire to go to the moon. We lost the money to go to the moon. They were canceling Apollo missions after Apollo 12. We were supposed to do up to Apollo 20. They cut the last 3 missions completely in 1972 Nixon wanted to cut Apollo 17 and maybe even 16, but somebody talked him into it. I forget who it was. It was somebody important. And the last three Apollo missions, 17, 18, and 19, they were going to someplace just really, really cool. They were going to go into Copernicus crater. There was a talk about going to Tycho crater. But in any event, when they say we lost the technology to go to the moon, that's not true, because we've been to the moon. Landers go to the moon all the time. This ridiculous Artemis mission is supposed to go next month. I've heard things where they're saying they should fly it unmanned because they don't trust the capsule. That's not an engineering problem. That's a government problem. That's a NASA problem. NASA used to be run by engineers and test pilots. Now it's run by bureaucrats and administrators. So NASA cannot get back to the moon, not because we don't have the technology, but because it's not what it used to be. It used to be the best and the brightest, and aerospace has changed. We have two giant companies now. We have Boeing and Lockheed Martin. At the time of the Apollo program, North American Rockwell built the Apollo command module and service module. Grumman built the lunar module. Boeing built one of the sets of boosters. IBM did the computers. All of these companies came together and did all that, and they only had to do one little part of it. So that's why that worked. Let's see, Fame named a couple scattershot related questions. How is the moon size distance so perfectly correlated with the sun size distance to allow a full eclipse? Operation Fishbowl, the firmament? No, that one, depending on your worldview, is either an astonishing coincidence or evidence of divine creation, but it has nothing to do with technology. The moon happens to be 400 times smaller than the sun and 400 times closer than the sun. By the way, eclipses do not occur anywhere else in the solar system. It is true that other places in the solar system, the planet can block out the sun, but it doesn't get an eclipse. That's called an occultation. It blocks the sun. Or it'll be smaller in transit, but for them to be exactly the same size, to see an aurora, to see the corona, is the greatest coincidence in nature. So that's just plain coincidence. However, not many people realize how far away the moon is. If the Earth were a basketball and the moon were a baseball, those are approximately the correct sizes. And you put the Earth on the goal line of a football field, the moon would be on the 30-yard line. It wouldn't be on the 5-yard line, it'd be on the 30-yard line. It's very, very far away. A couple more and we'll call it a night here. Fame name says from ChatGPT, NASA astronaut Don Petit, in a 1916 interview, Petit said something along the lines of, "We don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology." Well, first things first. NASA astronaut Don Petit, there were 400,000 people that worked on the Apollo program. And when you consider the number of people who've said it's fake, that number turns into something like 0.00006% of the total force employed by NASA said it didn't happen. And the number of crazy people in the country is probably closer to 6%. So it's several orders of magnitude lower than just a random number of people who are nuts. What he probably meant was, speaking as an astronaut, he said, "We don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology." We didn't destroy the technology. We outgrew the technology. We went from the Saturn V to the space shuttle. And the space shuttle was a far more complex vehicle than the Saturn V. Saturn V is essentially a just giant tank of fuel and oxidizer with 5 big engines. The space shuttle was the most complex piece of machinery ever made. So it's not like we destroyed technology. We advanced the technology, and then what used to be called a BDR, a big dumb rocket, disappeared because we were told that no, reusability was the shuttle. The shuttle was so expensive because Congress cut the budget on it. But what Elon Musk, the brilliant thing that Elon Musk did was he took the concept of a big dumb rocket and turned it into a big smart rocket. All of the Saturn V main engines that were ever used are at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and we know exactly where they are, by the way. They find them. I can show you a picture of them at the bottom of the ocean. It was not an efficient way to go to space. It was an extremely inefficient way to go to space. If you look at a Saturn V rocket, which is about, like this big, the only part that comes back is the top command module, and that's not usable again. So just because one guy says we don't have the technology, we destroyed it, what he's basically saying is our manufacturing base can't build the Saturn V anymore. What we built as a replacement, the space shuttle, infinitely more technologically advanced than the Saturn V, but it wasn't designed to go to the moon. America is such an amazing country that we are the only country in history that got bored going to the moon. And that's exactly what happened. There's no other way to spin it. We just got bored with it. So there you go. Give me a couple others here. There was one I like a lot. What was it? No. Let me see if I have this handy. From Wikipedia, I don't care about Don Petit. He's a veteran of 3 long-duration missions aboard the International Space Station, 1 space shuttle mission, and a 6-week expedition to find meteorites in Antarctica. Fantastic. You know who else was an astronaut on the space shuttle? This crazy chick who came back down was jealous of her boyfriend, who was also an astronaut, who was dating another astronaut, and she drove from Florida to California nonstop in her car wearing Depends underwear, crapping on herself and peeing on herself so that she could go to the other end of the country and confront this girl. She was a NASA astronaut who flew on the space shuttle. It's not, one guy saying something doesn't outweigh what millions of people saw with their own eyes. I saw a Saturn V launch, I saw Apollo 13 launch, and I was there with 6 million people. So I don't much care about what Don Petit says or doesn't have to say. I mean, this is the way I would respond to that question. Okay, here's how I would respond. Let me just check one thing here. Hang on a second. Hang on. Right, I just got a bunch of false answers. All right, so here's how I would respond to a Don Petit question, fame name. Let me ask you a question. What if I told you that somebody was at the last Super Bowl game and they said that no, the whole thing was faked, that the Kansas City Chiefs actually won the Super Bowl? And what if I told you that this person was a lifelong football fan and was a reporter on football and had been reporting on football his entire life? He was in the stadium. He saw the thing being faked. The Chiefs actually won the Super Bowl. The Eagles lost. And that the entire transmission that went out to the people was doctored. The whole thing was fake. And this guy was willing to swear on a stack of Bibles that that's actually what happened. What would your reaction be? Your reaction would probably be he's either lying or he's crazy, because something that monumental was witnessed by so many people with their own eyes that there's no way that's true. Now I'll ask you an even better version of that question. What if the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles came out on TV and said on ESPN that he witnessed the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs actually won the game? Not that they tried to cheat, but that they actually won the game. And I said to you, listen, man, the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles admitted that they lost that game. What would you say about that? What would you say if the coach of the Eagles swore and swore and swore that they actually lost that game? Does that one person's testimony outweigh what was seen by 120,000 people in the stadium, millions of people on live TV? Or is that guy just barking nuts? And by the way, Petit didn't say that we didn't go to the moon. He just said that they destroyed the technology. What he really meant to say was we moved away from the technology. One person does not outweigh the laws of physics, and one person does not outweigh 50 million live witnesses. There are crazy people out there, and and not only crazy people, there are people just genuinely mistaken. They're just plain wrong. And so anytime you hear one person say this or one person say that, and some of this stuff is taken so badly out of context. For example, I think I heard one of the things that people say is Buzz Aldrin in an interview denied that we went to the moon. And I looked at that, and the question was something like, Mr. Aldrin, what was the scary? What at what point were you most scared on your trip to the moon? And Aldrin said it didn't happen. What Aldrin is saying is there was no scary part of the mission, because for Buzz freaking Aldrin, he wasn't scared at all. If you listen to the question, he's saying words to the effect of, the actual question is, did you go to the moon? It didn't happen. No. She said, what point of the going to the moon did you find most scary? He said, it didn't happen. And people interpret that to mean, oh, we didn't go to the moon. See, he just admitted it. It's just, there are virtually zero eyewitnesses, Bill, to what, fame name? Virtually zero eyewitnesses to what? To what? I saw the Saturn V rocket lift off, and so did millions of other people on the beach in Florida. So if you're telling me we didn't go to the moon because we didn't have the means to, but we did build a rocket that was 365 feet high and then got into Earth orbit and then stayed up there, then you're telling me that everything that we had to do to go to the moon we did, but we just didn't go because somebody said we didn't go? There were millions and millions of eyewitnesses to the Apollo 11 launch, and 12, and 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. And furthermore, seeing a rocket lift off and arc out of sight does not equal we definitely went to the moon. Seeing it on a TV most definitely does not. Okay, then where's your proof that it was faked? My proof that it was real was that millions of people saw a giant rocket lift off and arc away into space. Where's your proof that it didn't happen? You say it didn't happen, and I just told you that there were millions of witnesses to the most difficult part of it. There were millions of witnesses to the moon landing. It was coming down via live TV. There was nothing on that was questionable. And there's nothing that contradicts the fact that we went there. In fact, every single frame of the outside of that moon landing proves that we went up there, because if you look at the dust coming off of the feet of those astronauts, the dust sprays like water, and water behaves in a certain way on Earth, but dust will not behave that way unless you're in a vacuum. And the only way that could have been faked was if they filmed it in a vacuum, and the largest vacuum chamber in the world is not big enough to contain the lunar module. And furthermore, my question for you is, if it turns out that we faked the moon landing and that it all happened on a soundstage, then why the hell did the astronauts have mirrors on their helmets? Why would you put a reflective visor on your helmet, a wide-angle fisheye lens reflective visor, if you're telling me that I'm standing here and I've got the flag and there's the camera guy and there's the lighting guy and there's all the lights? Why would you put a mirror on my face if you wanted to do that? Why? If they hadn't had a gold reflective visor, would you say, "Oh, it's not fake, there's no gold visor"? You didn't say it didn't happen. You just asked a few genuine, hard-hitting answers. I'm giving you hard-hitting questions. I'm giving you hard-hitting answers. The ability of the lunar dust to play like water is absolute proof that it was shot in a vacuum. And it is harder to build a studio-sized vacuum chamber than it is to go to the moon. There's nothing particularly hard about going to the moon. The mathematics are really, really simple. I don't understand what the here. You know, I do. I mentioned this on Apollo 11, what we saw. You've been told that we landed on the moon, right? Oh, we just went to the moon and we landed on the moon. Okay, so if this whole thing didn't happen, if the whole thing is a conspiracy, then when did the conspiracy start? Because before Apollo 11, there were unmanned missions to fly and test the Saturn V and the LEM and the command module. Before that, there were Gemini missions where 2 men went into Earth orbit. Were those fake? Is the space station fake? Are we able to go to orbit but not go to the moon? What's so difficult about going to the moon if you concede that we can go to orbit, if you concede that SpaceX launches are real and that the space station is real, then why can't we go to the moon? Do you know that of all the energy needed to go to the moon, 96% of the total energy required to go to the moon is needed to get us into Earth orbit? Once you get up there, it's just a little push. So I don't understand what's so difficult about it. So I can walk the moon landing. I can show you incremental steps from the moon landing that go all the way back to a bottle rocket. And at what point does this become a conspiracy? Are bottle rockets real? Was the V2 real? Well, the V2 was the first vehicle to take a captured V2, put a second stage on it called the Wack Corporal. First picture of the Earth taken from space was taken in 1946, I think, or a couple years later. Did the Mercury flights happen? Did one man go out into capsule? Did he orbit the Earth, or were they fake too? And by the way, you said that the rocket just arced over the horizon. We were racing the Soviets to be the first country on the moon. The Soviets have sophisticated radar. And so if we're trying to beat the Soviets, but we're still in Earth orbit, we didn't actually go to the moon, don't you think the Soviets would have pointed that out? I mean, you would think that if the Saturn V just went into Earth orbit, didn't actually go to the moon, you think the first people that would be broadcasting that would be the people that we just spent the last 10 years trying to beat. But what actually happened, and I'll show you the headline if you want to see it, is that when we landed on the moon, the Soviet Union congratulated us. They didn't do it cheerfully, but they did do it. So if we didn't go, the first person we would have heard about it from is the Soviets. And the thing I love the most is just, let's see if I can find this. The thing I love the most is when, and this apparently is what convinced Joe Rogan that we didn't go. You can convince Joe Rogan of anything. If you got 10 minutes of your time and a wild and cool story, he's on board. Let me find this. So people say, and I think this is actually the best, I think this is the best of the here's why you didn't go arguments, which is the Van Allen belts. So hang on a second here. It's going to take me a second to find this. Where did I put it? Was it that long ago? Yeah, here we go. I'll just give you a couple. Just give you a couple of quickies. So one of the questions is, how come you can't see stars from the lunar surface? Well, when you step out into sunlight, your eyes adapt to the bright light, and at nighttime, over time, you get what's called night vision. Your eyes open up, your retinas become more sensitive. So my first question is, how much brighter do you think sunlight is compared to full moonlight? In other words, if you step out at noon on a clear day and the sun's directly overhead, how much brighter is sunlight than moonlight on a clear night when a full moon is directly overhead? I'll take answers from everybody because I just love this stuff. Anybody want to guess at any of this stuff? I'm happy to do it. Anybody want to guess how much brighter sunlight is than moonlight? 94% brighter, something like that. Sunlight is 380,000 times brighter than moonlight. And sunlight is 9.5 trillion times brighter than starlight. 9.5 trillion times brighter than starlight. So you either expose for the stars or you expose for the sunlight. You're in broad sunlight. You gotta close that down so you can see details on the moon, details on the eyes, or else the whole film is just burned out. It's actually, starlight is 9 trillion times fainter than sunlight. And by the way, the moon in all of the moon pictures looks relatively about the same kind of color as talcum powder. It looks pretty white. That is the picture exposure that got us the best images of the moon. But the moon, the actual moon, is about as reflective as black asphalt. The moon is a dark object. So, here we go. But this is my favorite. There's no way we could have gone to the moon because the transition through the Van Allen belts would have been fatal. So the first question is, okay, well, what's a fatal dose? You say it's going to be fatal, take a fatal amount of radiation, then how much radiation does it take to kill a person? Well, it turns out that you can't really measure that precisely because there's so much variation between individuals. So they have a dose that will kill 50% of the population. That's what's considered a fatal dose. A fatal dose is the amount of radiation necessary to kill 50% of the people that are exposed to it. So it turns out that the fatal dose would be 400 rad would be 50% mortality within 30 days if there's no medical treatment. That's the definition. 400 rad will kill you. 400 rad equals 4 sieverts and 4,000 millisieverts. I know we're just talking, it could be 4,000 millitomatoes or 4,000 grapes or whatever. The fatal dose for 50% of the population is 4,000 millisieverts. Now, as it turns out, we have the numbers for the missions in terms of how much radiation they took. 4,000 to kill you. Apollo 8 had 1.6, Apollo 10 had 4.8, Apollo 11 had 1.8, Apollo 12 had 5.8, 13 had 2.4, 14 for some reason, sun must have been active, had 11.4 millisieverts of the 4,000 it would take to get to 50-50. 15 had 30 millisieverts, Apollo 16 had 5.1, and Apollo 17 had 5.5. So the average Apollo dose was 4.6 millisieverts. By the way, the average dose you get on Earth, just now, right now, sitting here, going outside, walking around, every single year, every single person on the planet gets 3 millisieverts of radiation just from background sources, just from cosmic rays and radioactivity in the soil, radioactive potassium in bananas. So basically what it means is, for most of the Apollo missions, the astronauts took, well, in the worst case scenario on Apollo 14, the Apollo 14 astronauts took enough radiation to equal 3 years of radiation on Earth. Just walking around in the last 3 years, all of us have taken as much radiation as the most radioactive mission. So the Apollo dose average was 4.6. That's about 18 months of just walking around on the Earth. There was heavy shielding in the command module, light shielding, blah, 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 blah. Now, as far as the Van Allen belts go, the guy who, Van Allen, who discovered the Van Allen rings, did the calculations on this. The space shuttle, which is heavily shielded, if the space shuttle orbited in the most radioactively hot part of the Van Allen belts. If the space shuttle orbited inside the hottest part of the Van Allen belts, the 50-50 mortality rate would take about a week. So if you were in a spaceship like the shuttle that had shielding like the Apollo capsules, it would take you a week of exposure inside the hottest part of the Van Allen belts to get a 50-50 fatal dose. 7 days. Apollo went through that ring in 2 hours. So they took, on the trip out and back, they took about less than 1% of the fatal dose. And those are numbers, man. Those are verifiable numbers. The numbers for the Apollo missions came off of the dosimeters that they were wearing. The numbers for how radioactive the Van Allen belt is open source information that anybody can look up. And, so there it all is. And most people don't know this, but Grand Central Station in New York City has 4 times the amount of radiation as the maximum allowable radiation dose inside the control room of a nuclear power station. And the reason for that is Grand Central Station is made out of granite, and granite is mildly radioactive material. So everybody who's walked through Grand Central Station, and some people walk through it twice a day, every day for their lives, are getting 4 times the amount of radiation that would be the maximum allowable in a nuclear reactor control room. So this is the truth about radiation and about dosages and all the rest of it. People are hysterical over radiation. When the Fukushima reactor, that reactor had this radiation leak because they tried to save the reactor. If they'd simply flooded the reactor and not tried to save it, there wouldn't have been any problem at all. But nevertheless, we asked a question back when it happened. I want to say it was 2011, and somebody said, do you think that we should take the survivors in the Fukushima area? Do you think we should take those people and fly them to America in order to get them out of the radiation exposure? And most people said yes. And it turns out that they would take more radiation on the flight from Japan to America than they would if they'd stayed there. Once you get to 30,000 feet, you are above a lot of the atmosphere. And so people that fly commercially, like pilots and flight attendants, actually do have a bit of a radiation risk because they're spending a significant amount of time at an elevated level of radiation. But they're not dropping like flies, man. So anyway, you can do this all day, and I took longer on it than I wanted to because this is just a subject that I warm up to. In any event, that'll do it for tonight. And you should know by now that this show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. And we're very, very grateful for all of their support and continuing support, and also to the rest of the Strata crew. It's been so much fun to have, keeping me honest and entertained and enthusiastic and all the rest of it. So we will see you on Monday for the Stratosphere Studio, and we will be, well, I should have some more basic stuff to get done. The thing about this, like everything else really that's important, every minute you spend on the unglamorous basics saves you hours downstream when you have to correct errors that you should have gotten early. So we're doing this very methodically, and I'm real proud of that. So anyway, thanks for being here, everybody. And we will see all of you guys on the Stratosphere Studio show on Monday.